English drill. In this video, we are going to discuss the important elements of a story. Every story that you write as a part of your ICSE essay section, they have to have these elements that we are going to discuss today. Number one, plot. The plot is a sequence of events in the story which follow one another and give a definite shape to the story. A short story should have a definite, well-defined plot. Every event or incident should have a necessary and logical connection with the events that come before or after it. Do not insert any event that is not relevant to the plot. Just like you have a very tight word limit, your plot should also be a tight and gripping one. For example, suppose you're writing a story about how you went rowing with your friends, and when you were in the middle of the river, there rose a dangerous thunderstorm. Now, in this case, you do not have to write about what was going on in your neighbor's house as you were leaving home, or how you ran into a childhood friend on your way to the river. These are completely unnecessary and irrelevant things. But suppose just when you're about to leave home, you hear the news running in your neighbor's television. You hear the person who reads the weather report declaring or alerting the viewers to the approach of a thunderstorm that evening. Now that's a relevant detail that gives your readers a sense of what is about to follow. So relevant details like these, you can drop them in your body within your essay in one or two places, but do not include any irrelevant detail that has nothing whatsoever to contribute to your plot. Number two, characters. Now, characters are a prerequisite for any story. Your characters can be humans, animals, aliens, robots, anything. However, there has to be more than two characters playing distinct, significant roles. Even if you have two main characters and two minor characters, the minor characters should have roles that contribute to your plot. They should be in a kind of position where if you exclude them from the plot, then very important details of your story will be missing. So if you are including more than two characters, make sure you give them meaningful roles that are very, very necessary to your story. Characters, be it major or minor, should have a distinct personality. They should be conscious, they should be aware, they should have a consciousness of their own. They should all have a sense of selfhood, and they should be different from one another. Do not make all your characters similar. Human beings are heterogeneous, so your characters should also be different from one another. Another very important point when it comes to character building and character development is the fact that use a few appropriate vocabulary to describe the appearance of your main characters at least. Just one or two words or features like she had brown glassy eyes, or stiff black hair, or he had a button nose. These are very small features which you can explain with just one or two words, but they have a huge impact when it comes to visualization. The more you leave such small features scattered in your story, the more your reader can visualize how your characters look like or what your setting looks like. But do not go on and on and on writing big paragraphs, rendering elaborate picture portraits of your main character. You should not write one paragraph full of description, because you neither have the time nor the words to spare. You have to write your entire story within a time limit and also a word limit. So be very, very careful. You might use one or two words to describe your character, but do not go on and on and on giving a thorough description which is absolutely unnecessary. Number 3, dialogues. Let me give you a few examples of dialogues. Number 1, within quotes, I haven't received the parcel yet. Quotes close, comma, said Ananya to Megha. Number 2, again within quotes, oh, comma, it's such a sultry afternoon, exclamation mark, quotations closed. She wiped her handkerchief across her forehead. Number 3, once again within inverted commas, help me, please, exclamation. She cried, clutching the envelope tightly in her hand as though her life depended on it. Another example, again within inverted commas, see you soon, exclamation mark, quotes close. She left with a wave of her hand and a whirl of her skirt. So you can see these are various types of dialogues, and there are two parts to every dialogue. First, a section within the inverted commas, which is the dialogue, the utterance that is being said. And the second part is the section before or after the section enclosed within inverted commas. So the second part is the section that is outside the inverted commas. And this is the section that is known as the dialogue tag. I have discussed this in one of the earlier videos. What is a dialogue tag? This is a dialogue tag, the section that is outside the inverted commas. You can use these dialogue tags to give relevant information about the speaker. For example, let's take one of the dialogue examples I just mentioned. Help me please, she cried, clutching the envelope tightly in her hand as though her life depended on it. So what do we get to know about the speaker here? There's something that has to do with some kind of an envelope. Maybe it contained a threat letter or anything. But it was as if her life depended on that envelope. And she was in a very helpless state. See, so much information being expressed just through one simple dialogue tag. The next example that I mentioned, see you soon, she left with a wave of her hand and a whirl of her skirt. So from this dialogue tag, you can understand that the speaker was wearing a skirt of some sort. So what the speaker is wearing, the speaker's appearance, what the speaker is doing, these are all small little details that you can convey to your reader through these dialogue tags. But these bits of information, they too have to be relevant information. Now, what can you do to make your dialogues realistic? Number one, listen to people speak. Be a good listener. You have to write your dialogues exactly the way they are spoken if you want to write realistic dialogues. Number two, use short, incomplete sentences at times to portray breaks in the speech or interruptions, especially when there are too many people, maybe in a group, all speaking together. You can hardly expect one person to fully frame a sentence and complete what he has to say. If it's a group discussion of some sort, there are always people interrupting each other. And if you want to portray that realistically, then obviously you have to include these interruptions and breaks in speech. So, include interruptions, breaks in speech through dashes or ellipses, but only 3 dots, mind you. The ellipses should not go on and on. Only 3 dots wherever there's a break in the dialogue. Number 4, do not use too many ellipses. Not too many ellipses. There can be 3 dots, but not more than 3 dots. 3 dots is sufficient. The next point is, one dialogue should not be 1 paragraph long unless it's a formal speech or announcement or declaration of some sort. Otherwise, please keep your dialogues short. 2 or 3 short sentences, that's perfectly alright, but one dialogue should not be 1 paragraph long. There's another point that I would like to mention, and that is when it's 2 people having a conversation, talking to each other, dialogue tags are not always necessary. So at first maybe you can include a few dialogue tags for the first few dialogues to indicate who the speakers are. But afterwards, you can also use short dialogues. Suppose a speaker is asking another person a question. Do you want to go to the cafeteria? Yes, the other person is replying. So in this case, you do not have to put a dialogue tag after yes. You can just write yes in the next line, and that will be enough to convey to your reader that it's a reply and answer to the previous speaker's question. Number 4, setting. The setting is the backdrop, the place where your story is based, the location basically. So there can be 1 or several backdrops depending on where your character is moving. If your character is moving from one place to another frequently, then obviously the backdrop keeps changing. It's not stable. But treat your setting just like you would treat your character. Any important character in your story. The setting is all about the weather, the climate, the atmosphere, the culture, the politics, the architecture of a place, the habits and customs of people, they all fall within the setting. And if you leave 1 or 2 features of the setting, whenever a character moves from one place to another, or even if the story is all about one particular place, if you include some relevant details about the setting, it will make your story very picturesque. So, sunshine, rainbow, gardens in full bloom, they all represent happiness. So, make your setting correspond to or influence the moods of your character, the moods, the behavior, everything. So your setting should correspond to your character's psyche or the mood of your character. So damp, musty localities with dingy houses and moss-covered walls and trees with gnarled roots, they are all suggestive of something sinister or spooky about to follow. If your character is down in the dumps, suffering from a mental breakdown, you can just drop a few hints in the weather. Suppose it was raining outside, there was a thunderstorm. So the emotions that are ravaging inside your character's mind, they are getting a portrayal through the weather. Sunshine filtering in through trees, birds twittering all around, they are all suggestive of perhaps the arrival of a long-lost lover or some great cheerful news or a surprise about to follow. Number 5, conflict. Conflicts are what make and break stories. A short story should have at least one conflict, because without a conflict, a story basically doesn't have a purpose. It's all bland and straightforward. So include at least one conflict in your story. Now, what are conflicts? Any kind of problems, any kind of difficult situation that your protagonist finds himself, herself, or themselves in, that's a conflict. Any kind of obstacle, any event, any incident that disrupts the normal flow of things, they all fall under conflict. Now, conflict can be of various different types, and you can incorporate these different types of conflicts in your stories based on what kind of a story you are writing. If you're writing a very realistic story, you can represent a man versus man conflict, a human versus human conflict, a conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist whose goal clash with one another, and that is the source of the conflict. The protagonist has a certain goal in mind, the antagonist also has a similar goal in mind, and their goals clash, and that is where the conflict arises from, with these two characters trying to jeopardize or sabotage one another. You can also portray man versus nature conflicts, where any kind of stories or movies that you've read or watched where there are depictions of natural disasters or nature turning against the humankind, that is basically man versus nature conflict. For example, the movie 2012. That's a perfect example of a man versus nature conflict, when survival and existence of humankind. You can also have man versus supernatural conflicts in your story if you're writing a fantasy short story or something of that kind. So supernatural, as you already know, ghosts, spirits, extraterrestrial creatures, they all come under supernatural. You can also have human versus mind conflict, where a character is usually unable to take a major decision, unable to perform any kind of activity because his mind is burdening him. For example, and this is the best example that I can give, Shakespeare's play, the famous play written by Shakespeare, Hamlet, where Hamlet's father's ghost had come to Hamlet asking him to take revenge on his killer, which was Hamlet's uncle Claudius, who had killed his father. And Hamlet, till the very end of the play, was unable to do that because he was constantly thinking of whether it's the right thing to do or whether it's the right time to murder his uncle or kill his uncle. So this was completely a human versus mind conflict, where the mind is the source of all the conflicts. Otherwise, the actions, the incidents, it can all flow naturally, but the mind is coming in between, be it the conscience, anything you might call it, and they are jeopardizing the normal flow of things. So these are the various kinds of conflicts that you can have in your story, and then develop on these conflicts and create a tight plot with strong characters. Number 6, the language and the flow. And I've already spoken about this before. Your story will be effective only if it is written in an easy, lucid language without the use of bombastic, flowery words and, archaic phrases that nobody uses anymore. So the more simple and more lucid your story is, the more marks you're going to get. So please refrain from using words, the meanings of which you're not sure of. And all your paragraphs, if your story has maybe 5 paragraphs and dialogues in the middle, they should all run effortlessly, they should all flow naturally, they should be connected. All the paragraphs should be connected to one another, and they should all flow naturally, smoothly and seamlessly. So write your stories in a very simple and lucid language so that everyone can read it and understand it. So these were the top 6 elements of a story which are absolutely quintessential if you want to write a good story. Hope this video was helpful. Hope you learned something new from it. See you in the next video where I'm going to demonstrate how a story is written.